So me, 36F, and my ex-husband, 38M, were together for 6 years, married for 2 before he left me. At the time our daughter was a year old, she's now 5. There was no warning signs. I left to go do a grocery shop, came home to him and his clothes/things gone, left a note saying he was in love with a new woman and wanted a divorce, just like that. I got absolutely no closure from that. Any calls or messages were dodged, even when they were about our daughter, literally nothing. During our divorce he tried to fight for full custody, despite at this point not having seen her for 6 months, which was denied because he was in the military and at times constantly moving. I got full custody, he got supervision with holidays if he's not deployed. Shortly after our divorce, he married his now wife and they settled down in the city we live in. He's still in the military but now he's on a specific base. I asked if he wanted to revise the custody since he was no longer traveling. He said no need, and he wants to take things slow. Since our divorce, he has maybe seen her 11 times? Over what, 4 years? And mind you, he literally lives in the same city, travel isn't a problem. My daughter is in therapy for this, just to process the absence/broken promises from her father, typical I'll pick you up this weekend only to bail last second. Anyway, on to the issue. I got a call from him Friday night. He was supposed to pick our daughter up at 8 a.m. Saturday. I got a call at 1 a.m. because I was up working, and he basically says that he can't take our daughter to his this weekend. After some back and forth, he says it's because his wife is upset with him spending time with her, and that she gets jealous. Yes, jealous of a 5-year-old. Absolute piss-take. I've been fairly cooperative this entire time, but Jesus, I was just so upset, like a build-up of emotions. I just started yelling at him, calling him a sack of shit and a disgrace. I mentioned our daughter being in therapy, how upset she was seeing some of the other kids with dads. In his preschool there was this dad day where the kids brought their dads in to do activities with them. They had a mom day the previous week, and he promised to show but pulled out last minute. I had to give her a sick day because she was so upset, so I really started going in on him. He gets angry and starts yelling and cussing back. Eventually he got quiet, and I ended up saying, you know what's really ducking funny? Our entire relationship you made a big show about how much you hated your dad, how horrible he was to your mum and siblings, how your biggest fear was becoming like him. But honesty? The apple doesn't fall far from the ducking tree, because you are just like him. This was said in anger. He isn't exactly like his father, but there were similarities, which was why I said it. His father cheated on his mother, abused them and eventually left and abandoned them for another woman. Take out the abuse part, in my opinion they're the same. He didn't say anything for a couple of seconds, said Jesus Christ, and then he just ended the call. I haven't had contact with him since then. I absolutely did not feel bad at the time. I felt like my words were justified, but the longer it waits the more I feel like I went too far. I ended up telling my parents what I said to get some feedback, and they said it was cruel and unnecessary. Comment 1. He's had 5 years to step up and be a parent. He's failed and you called him out on it, and he still didn't pick up his daughter the next day knowing that he was psychologically harming her. He is letting his wife, who cheated with a married man so we know her moral compass, cut his innocent child out of his life. They deserve each other. He has earned the title of deadbeat dad all on his own. Talk to your child's therapist about cutting him out completely. Stop telling her that he is going to spend time with her. This is harming her self-esteem. She is too young to process such deep emotions. Comment 2. Make sure you keep all of these texts for your daughter to see someday, because in my experience the dad who walked away tried to change the entire narrative to I refuse to let him see the kids. Never mind that I have a letter from him stating he didn't want the kids every other weekend, he didn't want the kids every other holiday, and he didn't want the kids for his 30 days in the summer. Comment 3. NTA, not only did he cheat, but he abandoned his daughter for some woman. But it would almost be less cruel if he would just all-out abandon her, but the fact that he strings her along with snippets of contact and false promise, only to get her poor baby little hopes up and shit all over them. You did the right thing to give him a metaphorical slap in the face with a heavy dose of reality. Maybe now he'll have an inkling of what your daughter has been feeling because of him. It should, since it seems he has felt it. My husband is Dominican and I'm Irish. Our kids look like him in terms of facial features, but they inherited my pale skin. Our son has his father's dark hair, but my daughter's is borderline dark blonde. Genes are weird. What are you gonna do? Both my kids and myself have my husband's last name, which is a popular Dominican last name. There have been times we get looks when people hear our last name and my husband isn't around. But it's never been too bad, and usually, I shrug it off. Due to my husband's work schedule, he's rarely at school events. So, most people just know me. There's another little girl in my daughter's class with the same last name as us. Her mom also volunteers often. When we met, she flat out said, "You're not Dominican." I said, "No. My husband and kids are." She said, "But your last name is X." I said, "Yeah, because it's my husband's." She pointed out how pale they are. I just said genes are weird. But almost every time we see each other, she brings it up somehow. Making comments about how pale the kids are. Finding it weird they don't know Spanish. My husband didn't learn growing up, so they don't know it either. I just let it roll off because while it's weird, I'm not about to get into a pissing contest. The teacher asked the kids to make collages about their cultures. My daughters had stuff related to being a Dominican and stuff related to being Irish. They had a whole culture day where parents were invited. The mom of the other little girl saw my daughter's collage and rolled her eyes, thankfully not in front of my daughter. There were no other kids around at the time as they were getting food. It was just parents looking at the collages. I asked what her problem is. She said, "I'm not a real Dominican." I said I never claimed to be. She said my kids aren't either, and that my husband is probably only a little Dominican and we're claiming a culture that's not ours. I was dumbfounded. All I could ask was, "Are you stupid?" She said there was no need to be defensive. Finally, I had enough, pulled out my phone and showed her pictures of myself with my husband and the kids. She stared at it for a moment and mumbled an apology. I said, "Yeah, maybe research how genes work so you don't make yourself look stupid in front of a bunch of third graders." She got teary-eyed and walked away. I got the stink eye from some other parents, which I ignored. When I told my husband later, he said calling her stupid repeatedly, when she already apologized, wasn't a whole move. Comment 1, NTA: why would she be so pressed about someone else's culture, or culture they claim to be? She was rude and basically harassing you on more occasions than one. She wasn't entitled to an explanation, let alone having to show her a picture of your family for her to be convinced. I think you were more than patient with her, and definitely NTA. Hate to break it to her, but she isn't the only Dominican to walk this earth, and not all Dominicans are gonna look like what her mind accepts as one. Comment 2. NTA. There is a saying, insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. You've been polite to this woman, who has been exceptionally rude to you, for a long time, and she has made it quite clear that she would not stop questioning your children's ethnicity. If you were going to get her to stop, you had to do something different. She brought this on herself by inserting herself into something that she had no reason to. Comment 3. NTA. I've had people call me less of a Dominican because I'm lighter and also don't speak Spanish. Since childhood. Especially from cousins who speak Spanish. And other Hispanics. So I feel this to my core. She was doing this at your child's school repeatedly and potentially within earshot of your children. It was tacky in the first place for her to be rolling her eyes at your kids' project. I'm glad you stuck up for them. When my wife and I were talking about getting married, my dad said that he would give us a down payment for a home. We were thrilled and kept that in mind. We would be able to afford a good starter home with his help, and we scrimped and saved to add to it. Except apparently he meant a sum of money good for a down payment for a house near us where the cost of living is low. He did not ever mean a down payment for a home in Colorado, where my wife and I have lived since we were in college. He said he thought I would be smart enough to realize that we'd need to move somewhere with a lower col than Colorado. He keeps saying move to a cheaper city. Our lives are here. Our friends, our jobs, our hobbies. You can't exactly leave your house and be up on top of a 14,000 feet peak in 6 hours where my family is. I told him that we had never talked about moving back there, and we never would. That we would rather be stuck renting for a while longer than be stuck somewhere we didn't want to be, and the move to a cheaper city wouldn't work for us. He said so be it and gave us the amount, and that was that. I expressed gratitude and thanked him for the money. It is still towards the goal. Well, because of this shift in our finances, we have had to make a lot of changes to save up the rest of the money. We have had to cut out vacations, birthday gifts, holidays, etc. We won't be traveling home for a few years. At our current rate, we should have an okay down payment by the end of next year, 2025. My dad confronted us about this because we won't come for a summer break trip and told me that I was being a selfish, entitled brat because I hadn't gotten my way. That I was essentially punishing the rest of the family because we assumed what his gift would be. I told him that I was grateful for the amount he gave us, but that it means we do need to buckle down and save every penny if we want to be able to afford a house anytime soon. Even townhouses around us are easily over $400K, and that's for the sketchy ones. But is my dad right? Edit to add FAQ. There was no amount formally discussed. He said a down payment and that was that. For my siblings, he paid for college. He paid cash in full for my sister's house, it was $317,000. He did not pay for my college. They are invited to come here anytime, but believe it should be me to go there because I am the one who moved. No, we do not go out to eat, avocado toast, Starbucks, cable, etc. etc. Comment 1, YTA for framing it as your dad screwing you over. He offered you a down payment for a home. You assumed it would be a certain amount. It wasn't. But he still gave you a generous gift. And now you describe that generous gift as screwing you over. Also, while you're under no obligation to go on family trips, to cut out any visits to them for a few years after your dad gave you this generous gift because it wasn't as much as you were expecting sends a message, whether you mean it to or not. Comment 2. 100% this. Since OP won't give numbers, let's assume $25,000 since it would only be 5-ish% for the home he is looking at. Let's assume 2 airline tickets are $600. Yes, YTA. Just pretend the gift was $24,400 and visit your family. This is the definition of ungrateful. OP says he's grateful with his words, but not with his actions. Also, how does OP not clarify what amount the gift might be ahead of time? My parents once offered to cover a family vacation. Before the end of the evening, I had run some rough costs and confirmed with my parents that I arrived at $4,000 and if they were sure they were comfortable covering that. Comment 3. Just for clarification, are you saying you are mad at your dad for not giving you more money? I wonder if the amount of money he gave you is less than the amount you would spend to go home and visit him. If it isn't, you are in fact punishing him for daring not to give you enough money to buy a house in a high cost of living area. Another question: did you tell your dad you wouldn't be visiting before or after he gave you the money? I am pretty sure I already know the answer though. I 38F and my husband 41M have been stressing over my parents. My parents are screwed as they took out of their pensions at 55 and have only about $130K each left. Their house has some equity but not as much as you would think, as they have withdrawn from their equity line of credit several times. My dad has a 100K truck and a vintage Porsche, and my mom has a 7-seater when they are the only ones now. My dad is very prideful and refuses to take anyone's advice, so it was a shock when they came to me and asked for money. He has had a lot of health issues and told me he is going to be taking Social Security now. He is 68 and quitting his job. Which means they cannot afford their mortgage or car payments. They totally blindsided me. I had no idea how bad it was until now. Thinking back, I guess I should have known, as they buy so much unnecessary crap, but my parents always acted they were rich. I told them point blank I wasn't funding them until I could see all their accounts and assets, and this caused a huge fight, but they eventually relented. I went through what they have and they really don't need my help. They just need to downsize dramatically. My husband is a CPA, so he knows this stuff, and we went though and told what they needed to do. They need to sell all the vehicles and get a reliable sedan. They need sell their 3,400 square feet home and buy into a single home with a basement suite or an apartment. I think the apartment is better, as my dad struggles to mow the lawn and hires someone now anyway. But my mom insists she needs land for a garden. After that, their SS payments would be enough and they would still have a small nest egg. This was met with them complaining that they would be living like prisoners. My parents were angry if they got a small single family, they would need to rent out the basement. My dad insists the basement, which he has as a man cave, is necessary for life, and my mom refuses to downsize as she has a whole room full of clothes at their current home that can't fit in a smaller house. I got mad and told them they need to humble themselves since they are the ones asking for money. This resulted in them yelling how ungrateful I am over the phone until I hung up. I told them they have to do this because I'm not helping. They still have more assets than my husband and I, and we have a son to save college funds for. My parents have been trying to guilt me by saying they gave me great Christmas presents and college funds, so I owe them. I feel like that was a tiny proportion of their spending and it didn't put them in this position, but am I obligated to help support them when they can support themselves if they downside? Comment 1. Definitely NTA. You don't owe them. If they bring it up again, tell them you are paying it forward to their grandson. Anyway, maybe give them some time to get used to the idea. It's probably a big shock and adjustment. Their reaction was not okay, but I can imagine them needing some time before coming around. Comment 2. NTA. They need to learn how to live within their means. You don't owe them anything. A gift isn't a gift if there's a condition attached to it, especially if that condition isn't disclosed beforehand to the receiver. That's just manipulative. Your parents need to see what prisoners actually live like.